Early Christianity is going to develop, of course, after the death of Jesus. You can't have Christianity until Jesus has died on the cross. That is the basis of Christian faith. And Christianity initially starts as what is often referred to as a small cult. This doesn't mean that it is a particularly dangerous thing or anything like that. Historians often refer to new small religions as they, in their early period, as they're beginning to develop as cults. So don't read too much into that. And we see this issue of mystery religion versus state religion. Of course, state religion is the idea of Zeus and Jupiter and Hera, Juno, all of these gods that we've been dealing with. But then we have the mystery faiths that have been developing around the same time Christianity is going to be developing. These mystery faiths tend to come from the East, and they tend to reflect or encourage this idea of salvation. Greek and Roman religion has no concept of salvation. You really, once you pass, you go to the Lake of Souls or something like that, everyone's going to the same place. Yes, there sometimes talks about, warriors or other specific people possibly going to more of a paradise, but it's not what we would think of as heaven. And so these religions, whether it's Mithraism, the cult of Isis, Christianity, etc., as they exist, and they're typically brought back by the Roman military into Rome itself, who are really the big travelers of the time, they're going to be attracted because there's this idea of being able to get through this life, but there's something better later on that's going to attract a lot of people. It's also one of the early text-oriented religions. I say early, it's not the earliest. For example, Taoism, Buddhism, Judaism are text-based, but we don't see a lot in the classical Mediterranean world. Not that's widespread. Judaism is a very small piece of the Roman population at the time. But what this means is there's something to look back on. And of course, the text I'm talking about is the Bible, which is written in stages. It's, of course, not written as a singular piece. So just looking at the New Testament, what we're looking at is an oral tradition. So no one's writing during the life of Jesus. This is not uncommon. We see it in numerous other faiths. Islam starts out as an oral tradition. Buddhism starts out as an oral tradition. But eventually it's going to start being written down. And that means there's going to be changes and modifications to what's happening because, of course, it's being passed mouth to ear through at least one generation. And the written narratives really start to develop around the 60s to around 95. Some people put it later. So, for example, we see Paul writing between 50 and 60, and then we see Mark writing between 65 and 70. Very, very simple account in Mark. It gets developed further during the writing of Matthew and Luke. And by the way, we don't know if these are the actual names of the people writing this, but it is attributed, that is the name attached to it. Matthew and Luke are really written at basically the same time. And that is why they are so similar. And then John later, sometime between 90 and 120. I've seen dates later than that 90 to 100 that you see on your screen. What this means is each of those books has to be dealt with separately because it reflects the realities of a slightly different time period. Sometimes one generation or half a generation in between the various books. Christianity will spread throughout the Mediterranean, primarily started by the apostles. And what happens is after the death of Jesus, they scatter. And so they're going to go to all these different towns. Ephesus is a major one, Carthage, Antioch, Jerusalem, and of course Rome, among others. And as it spreads, what happens is those individual apostles become the expert on Christianity in that area, on their belief system. And so you're going to see some variation, which is going to be a problem when we get to about Constantine or around 325. What's going to happen is they're going to have the Council of Nicaea because there are all these different opinions, because of course they don't have communication, easy communication back and forth between these communities so that they can all come up with or work with the same doctrine. So they're all slightly different. And so you have the Council of Nicaea in 325 that will bring that all together and determine what books and what versions, what translations of what books will be used in what will become the Bible, or the Latin Vulgate, which is the Latin translation.